The Oakland Tribune, July 6, 1930. I am looking forward to the screen production which is being planned by Universal. As you know, Dracula represents but a small portion of the story, as outlined in the Bram Stoker novel. There is one scene in particular that cannot be presented on stage, but would be most effective on screen. I refer to that episode describing Dracula's voyage by sea to England. He starts on a vessel containing a full complement of sailors. Each night the vampire, in order to retain his earthly form, must drink the blood of one human. Each morning there is a dead sailor. Finally the vessel comes within view of the coast of England. One sailor remains, and Dracula takes his hideous toll. Hi, I'm Bobby. Using the DVD scene selection, I am doing a scene-by-scene review of the 1931 version of Dracula. Tonight, we are on Scene 6, Bound for England. In this scene, Dracula and Mr. Renfield, who is now Dracula's slave, are on a ship bound for England. There's a terrible storm, and Dracula kills the entire crew. When the ship lands in Whitby Harbor, the authorities find that Renfield is the sole survivor, and that he is completely mad. Now, they don't actually show Dracula killing the crew. It's just implied before and after. But the way they imply it is even more haunting than actually seeing it. As England.Lugosi stated in his interview, this scene is from the book. In 1890, Bram Stoker was doing research for Dracula while vacationing in Whitby, which is one of the main settings. And he was looking at postcards of Whitby Abbey and its adjoining church, which were made and sold by the photographer Frank Sutcliffe. And there was one postcard of a beached wreck of the Russian schooner, the Dmitri, that had run ashore in Whitby 5 years earlier. And according to David Scal, that postcard captured Bram Stoker's imagination. Bram Stoker went to the very cooperative Coast Guard boatsman William Petherick to find out the details on the Dmitri and other local shipwrecks. And Petherick gave him a transcribed account of the Dmitri wreck from the official records. And all of this inspired Bram Stoker's decision that Dracula should arrive by shipwreck, and he named his fictional ship the Demeter. Now, the Broadway play did not have this scene. Instead, they actually talk about Dracula arriving by airplane, and how for the first time in history, you're able to travel from Transylvania to England in a single night, which is actually really clever and explains why Dracula has never done this before. Now, the original idea for the movie was that he was actually going to have a bat-shaped airplane. I told you he's the original Batman. Then, holy Einstein Batman! They decided to stick with the book, which definitely fits Dracula's old world personality more. They renamed the ship the Vesta, and with England.Lugosi's and Dwight Frye's fantastic acting, it is one spooky, albeit non-violent death scene set at sea. In Hungary, England.Lugosi had played Romeo. He had played Jesus Christ, and at the National Theatre of Budapest, where they have a ranking system, at one point, he was ranked their #1 actor. On screen, he was theatrical, with his gestures and the way he said his lines. But as Arthur Lenning suggests, those larger-than-life, classical qualities is what makes him a vampire, and not just a man in a cape. But it was also combined with the intensity and total identification of a method actor, which was ahead of his time. Now, some considered Dwight Frye to be the first method actor. He had been on Broadway since he was 23, and was voted one of the top 10 actors currently on stage. He wasn't in the play Dracula, but he had already worked with England.Lugosi in the Broadway play The Devil and the Cheese. And in late 1929 in California, He'd starred in the play Rope's End, which was based on the intellectual murderers Leopold and Loeb, and Dwight Fry played the more vulnerable murderer. Even at that stage, he was already concerned about being typecast as weirdos, and Lugosi was already concerned about being typecast as villains. So both men bring an expertise and a deepness to their roles that is both timeless and frightening. The scene opens with the sailors fighting in a storm. They didn't film this for Dracula. It's actually stock footage from the 1925 film The Stormbreaker.
Because there are more frames per second in a silent film, the sailors look like they're moving really, really fast. But I think it's groovy. It makes it look more frantic.
Then, in the hull of the ship, we find that the mild-mannered Mr. Renfield has become Dracula's slave. You know how really loyal dogs are so excited to see you when you come home? Times that by 10. And that's Renfield. He worships Dracula like a god. He is ecstatic that Dracula is about to come out of his coffin, and is desperate to be in his good graces. Master, the sun is gone. You will keep your promise when we get to London, won't you, Master? You will see that I get lives, not human lives, but small ones, with blood in them. Oh, I'll be loyal, Master, I'll be loyal. Now, if this isn't your billionth time watching Dracula, like it is mine, you might not be sure what he means by that. And I like that they give it that mystery. But what is for sure is Renfield is getting something in return, and on a smaller scale, he'll be taking on some of Dracula's characteristics of becoming a predator who consumes blood. Oh, don't worry, it's just type D. What really struck me about this scene is how devastated Renfield looks when Dracula walks away.
Dracula is his whole world, but to the Count, Renfield means nothing. Dracula responds telepathically, with no emotion and no pity.
And this is one of the most haunting images of the Count. Karl Freund lit this shot to spooky perfection. It's dark, shadowy, and with two small lights on Bela's eyes, making them even more piercing and suggesting his hypnotic powers. And it matches the book, because when Jonathan Harker first meets Dracula, he states that Dracula stood there like a statue. And Bela gives off this evil and supernatural aura with a stare that goes right through you. If you watch carefully, you'll notice his body rocks back and forth a little, and I really dig that detail. For one thing, they're on a ship during a storm, so it makes sense that he's moving a little. But also from a viewer perspective, his eyes are just so intact that I kind of wondered if it was a still photograph. But that movement tells you, no, the camera was running. His concentration is just that powerful. The way they imply that Dracula is going to kill the entire crew is by intercutting shots of him with the storm footage. And with Bela's dark and mysterious portrayal, you have all the information you need to imagine what he's going to do. And these sailors are fighting for their lives just to be killed. There is no hope for them. And it creates this atmosphere of a ship of doom. Along with looking sinister, my friend Chris Guthrie, who loves Bela Lugosi too, feels that these expressions also convey sadness. Now, I don't know if I would have interpreted it that way on my own, but I can see his point. I doubt if he's feeling sorry for them, but maybe sorry for himself, because he has no life to fight for. Then we skip over all the violence and all the biting, and go directly to the aftermath, where the Vesta has landed in Whitby Harbor, and we actually get a cameo by the director Todd Browning as the harbor master. Now we don't see him or anyone else, as you could tell. It's just the voice off camera, which is perfect. Because it makes the Vesta seem more lifeless, like a ghost ship. And fitting for Dracula, Todd Browning is kind of a mysterious figure, and this cameo reinforces it, where you don't see him talking. It's just the voice.
The captain dead, tied to the wheel. Horrible tragedy, horrible tragedy. What's that? It seems to come from that hatchway. This is one of the scariest shots of the movie. Dwight Fry looks and sounds absolutely insane. As the scene fades out, it gets a little brighter and his eyes look even creepier.
Then there's Dwight Fry's signature crazy laugh, which is one of the best and most iconic scary laughs in film history. And it has such a unique sound. It sounds both pleased, like, look what my master has done. But there's also a nervous and scared quality. And I think this laughter is a response to seeing the crew get killed, which had to be horrifying for Renfield, especially because we know from the previous scenes what a kind soul he is. But with Dracula as his master, all he could do was watch or potentially help with the bloodbath.
Dwight Fry's son had the same name of his father, and when he would go to restaurants or any place where people would see his name on a credit card or a check, people would do imitations of his father's laugh for him. Then we see a newspaper article explaining the shipwreck and how Renfield has been sent to Dr. Seward's sanitarium. This is a holdover from silent films, where they had to find creative ways to give the audience background information. And I don't know why, but I think it's groovy looking. Plus, it matches the book. The novel is made up of journal entries, letters, and there is a newspaper article from the Daily Graph describing the wreck of the Demeter. Now, I'm keeping track of this. This is the second time that a text has been used to tell this story. Remember, the opening line is a secretary reading the travel brochure.
Alright, let's address the werewolf in the room. Would this scene have been better if they actually showed Dracula killing the crew?
Now, in Nosferatu, which was an unauthorized version of Dracula that was pulled from the market, they show Count Orlok approaching two sailors, and it's one of the spookiest scenes. In the Spanish version of Dracula, I would say they film it in homage to Nosferatu. Unfortunately, Carlos Villalobos is not the best Dracula, and he comes off as unintentionally funny instead of scary. But that does tell us that Todd Browning could have filmed it this way. Now, according to Gary Rhodes, there are several possible reasons why he didn't. Maybe he ran out of time. We know that Carl Laemmle Jr. didn't like the idea of Dracula biting men. We're not sure what the reason was. But in all honesty, Nosferatu had just come out 9 years earlier, so this approach is more creative. It's meant to be a short scene, so you would have only seen a couple sailors get killed anyway. And it's 1931, it's not going to be that graphic. So I honestly don't think that anything they could have shown could have lived up to the power of Bela Lugosi's evil presence, or to the power of Dwight Fry's demented reaction. But when you let those performances inspire your own imagination, you can visualize something much more horrifying than even today's movies could show. Just ask yourself, how evil is Dracula? What is it that drove Renfield batty? The more you think about what happened on the Vesta, the more haunting it is.
It takes a while to travel from Transylvania to England, so when Dracula finally arrives, I'm sure he'll want a nice, refreshing drink. As you'll find out in Scene 7, The Visitor.